Okay. So again, I'd like to introduce our facilitator for the training. Her name is Emily Levy. Emily is the founder and executive director of scrutineers.org. And Scrutineers is a nonpartisan group. It's a progressive online community that's dedicated to fair, transparent, accessible, and secure elections. She's been an activist for over 50 years and a leader in the election transparency movement dating back to 2004 when she volunteered for the Election Protection Coalition in New Mexico. And then she coordinated the precinct level statistical investigation into the presidential election in Ohio. So what was going on in Ohio? But that sounds serious. Her advocacy for election security has included election projects in her home state of California, as well as here in Wisconsin, in Ohio, Arizona, in New York, and Nevada, New Mexico, Virginia, Alabama, Florida, and Georgia. So she's been across the country helping to secure elections. She specializes in helping members of the public understand election technology and security issues and become active in working for secure and transparent elections. So we welcome Emily Levy. Thank you for connecting with us and providing this training.
Thank you so much, Norma, and thanks to Souls to the Polls for inviting me to do this with you. And thanks to everyone who is watching this training either live or recorded. I know the election is 2 days away and everybody who cares about it is super busy. So I know that more people will be watching the recording than we're able to be here live. So I will tell you more about our organization, Scrutineers, toward the end of the presentation. I estimate the presentation is about 40 minutes long, though I've made some changes to it to make it specific to Wisconsin. It's a presentation that we give all over the country, and I haven't actually timed it exactly how long it is, but that's my estimate. We should have time for questions and answers at the end. And
Bridget Johnson joined the meeting.
Welcome, Bridget. I'm glad you're here. We're just getting started. I'm Emily Levy from Scrutineers, and Norma just finished introducing me, and we're just starting this presentation, which we call How to Help Stop Election Sabotage. And I know that there are a lot of places you could all be today. I really appreciate that you chose to be here with us, learning how you can help stop election sabotage by becoming a vote count observer. I promise to give you all that I can in the short time that we have today, and also to tell you how you can go deeper with any of the topics we're going to cover today that you want to learn more about. You know, a lot of people think of elections as pretty simple. People vote, the votes get counted, and the winners are announced. But the more you learn about elections, the more you'll understand just how complicated they are and how hard it is to get them right. The people who run elections have really challenging jobs, especially now when they're under attack by people who don't want every voice to be heard. Most of the people running elections believe in democracy and the right to vote and are doing their best. And I know that we have at least one poll worker here today, so I honor you, and I've done that work myself, and it's really hard and you're so needed. Today's training is part of Scrutineers' AFTER project, which stands for Act for Trusted Election Results. We know that many people who care deeply about elections have a lot to do in the period leading up to elections until the polls close on election night. And some of you may have gotten involved in pre-election activities like registering voters, getting out the vote, campaigning, voting early yourself, and giving rides to early voters. And I'm wondering if you're doing or planning to do any of those activities for this election. And you could go ahead and type that into the chat. That would be great. And I actually can't see the chat on my screen right now, so maybe Norma, you could read out if anything that folks type in. Would that be okay with you?
Sure.
Okay. So we'd love to hear, are you giving rides to the polls? Are you working the polls? doing any of those activities that happen before election day or on election day, where the activities change to voting if you haven't yet, working the polls, serving as a poll watcher, driving folks to the polls, and of course, get out the vote work continues throughout the day. And our focus today is what happens after the voting, starting when the polls close on election night, and then on the days and possibly up to a couple of weeks that follow until the election is certified and any recounts or audits are complete. So we're going to teach you about how you can help ensure that the votes are counted fairly and accurately by observing at your local election office or wherever the votes are counted in your municipality. Do we have any chat messages?
No.
I'm trying to figure out how to get into the chat. I can't.
Well, do you
Oh.
want to just say out loud then what you
Oh.
want to type? That's fine too.
Oh. No, go ahead. I've also worked at Central Count too. So
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear.
I've also worked at Central Count here in Milwaukee.
Great, helping with the counting.
Yes, and make sure that every vote is counted and it's counted right and everything is as it should be.
Fantastic. Thank you for doing that work.
I have to say, it's because of my mom that I got into this work. She's been a poll worker and still is for many, 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 many years. I
And
think
she's
since I was
101 today and she's still
Yeah,
working polls.
since I was actually she retired from her job when she was 93, but she's been a
Amazing.
poll worker probably ever since, if I can remember, when I was like went off to college at 18. So
That's great.
I'm like 70. So
Bless her.
yeah.
Oh, wow. Gee, you've got a story, Africa.
Yeah, but none of my other sisters or brothers, took up this effort. They done different things, but to help, but
I'm
not.
sure your mom is proud of you following in her footsteps.
Yeah, well, I'm proud of her
She is.
to still be
Yes,
doing this at this age and have the mind to and the heart to do it. No
Yes,
dementia. no
absolutely.
Wow.
So
So we need volunteer observers all over the country in communities large and small. And no matter how much time someone has available to observe, some people are only able to do it once for a couple of hours, and then others will show up day after day, all the way up until the results are certified, which generally happens a couple of weeks after voting ends. So you can do this even if you're a poll worker, just start the next day or the day after, whenever you're available. I've found that it's really common for people who are dedicated to fair elections and care a lot about the results of elections to work hard leading up to an election and then on election day, and then just go home when the polls close and wait for the results, often feeling like they wish there was something more that they could do to make a difference. And I'm here to tell you that there is something more you can do, and it's really important. So these are my images. I found the people that looked like they were watching the election results and a little bit worried about it. So here's what we're going to cover today. We'll talk about what happens after voting ends, why it's important to observe, what to do when you arrive to observe, what kinds of things you'll see and what to look for, how to report any problems that you find, and then how to prepare to observe and just kind of some next steps. So people do show up to observe the vote counting without any training at all. Sometimes, with the way things are in the country right now, there might be a crowd of people in the election office who are there and they have no idea really what they're doing there. They're just, they might be there to try to stop votes from being counted. And we really need to have a lot of people there who are in favor of all the votes being counted. And sometimes, like I said, sometimes there will be a lot of folks observing, and sometimes you might go and you might be the only one or anything in between. So it's hard to know. But the more you know as an observer, the more effective you'll be. So I'm really glad that you're here today.
Could I ask a question, Emily?
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to ask Africa, when you were at the counting station, that's down on Kinnickinnick, right? That one?
no, we were actually at the Wisconsin Center this
Okay.
past. Yeah.
Okay. Were there observers? Did you see observers down there?
You really can't say because you'll have this time what they did was people were observing. They had to come check in at the front desk to let us know they were, or the people at the front desk to let them know they were observers. Unfortunately, other people in there that are, helping with the count. They don't know they're observers. They don't know who they are. So it's
Okay,
kind of like incognito type of thing. They're, so.
sure.
So
Yeah.
now there's supposedly a system where when you check in, you have to show a picture ID and you have to fill out a form, and then they're supposed to give you an ID that says you're an observer to wear.
If
I don't know if
if
that will
they-
really happen or not, but that's
yeah, because if
technically
they
what's
they
supposed to
didn't do well, if they done that at this one, as far as I know, because we switched between work, well, me, and my partner, they switched us between the front desk and checking people in, and not just the observers. They would just come in and say they're an observer. They didn't have to have a badge on or anything to say they're observer. And yeah, we had to see their ID, but that's really as far as it went.
And was that last November?
Now this is February.
Oh, in
February
February,
21st.
okay.
February
Oh,
21st.
yeah, recent.
Sometimes there's a
No.
difference.
You're right. Last November. I'm sorry.
So
Yeah.
this might be new since then, and it might just be that it's
Yeah.
not always enforced.
Yeah,
Just, who knows?
I think it would be a good idea to have it enforced, but I still think that it was so many people down there. Just for the central count, you probably just didn't know who was who.
Yeah.
yeah. Mm.
So I'm going to be sharing a lot of information today, and you might want to take notes, but we'll also share the recording of this with you. And we're going to send you out a bunch of, like, I'm going to be mentioning some links to places to get more information, and we'll send all those links to you tonight or tomorrow. So you'll have that. So let's talk about what happens after voters leave the polls. At polling places, poll workers have procedures that they follow to close up shop, as Africa could tell you because she does it. While you might be able to observe at a polling place on election night, in most cases, it's actually more useful to observe at the election office in your municipality or wherever the votes are coming in from the polling places and being processed. And throughout that processing, election workers have to make sure that they don't lose ballots or double count ballots, or permit ballots to be changed, or let anyone tamper with the election computers.
Mhm.
So now I'm going to ask you a question. This is a poll question. We usually put it on Zoom, but we're such a small group. I'm just going to ask you to answer out loud. So how accurate do you think the election workers will be in doing their jobs? So do you think they're all completely accurate all the time, or most people are completely accurate and some make mistakes, or we all make mistakes, so most workers do too? Do you think anybody, either some or most of them, will be intentionally unfair to one side or the other? So I'm curious what each of the four of you here with me think about that.
Okay,
But
I'll go first.
okay.
I think for the most part, from my experience, that people are pretty accurate. I think that if there are mistakes made, they're not intentional mistakes, or they're we had one person who it was his first time doing it. He just happened to be my partner thing, and it was his first time doing it. And so what he did, he just asked the question, what should we do? So actually that particular one mistake, we were able to, rectify without having to change anything on the ballot. Actually, it was two ballots together, and he counted the one. They just, kind of stuck together. The paper is kind of, almost cardboardish, like, kind of, not really, but you know what I'm saying. You know how they are.
Yeah.
And so, we just had to go back and we had to do that. But other than that, I think most people in general who are poll workers or working the central count, I think most people are honest and fair people and just want to do the best that they can,
Thank
although I did have one person that was working with us. I don't know how they do it in other states, but here at central count, they pair you with, if you're a Democrat, they pair you with a Republican or
Right.
independent or something other than what you are. They won't have two of the same party doing that,
That's great.
counting together and this and that, which I think is an excellent idea.
Yeah.
I tell you the truth. And there was a conversation that was going on, and you could tell he was not from the party I was from. I'll just put it that way. Just because
Okay.
the comments he made,
Mhm.
Sure.
So, but other than that, he was a nice guy. so it went well. It was a long, long night, a very long night.
Africa, I think I'm gonna need to ask you to come speak to scrutineers about your experience working at the central count. I wanna reach out to you afterwards and see if you'd like to do that, because I think that
Okay,
would be
sure.
really
Sure.
beneficial. So, Bridget or Lynn or Norma, do you want to respond to that question?
I don't have any firsthand, this is Bridget, I don't have any firsthand observations or experiences like Africa did, but I would have guessed basically what it is that she shared. And I thought that her firsthand account was very enlightening and affirming that our system does work. And if there are problems, they're inadvertent and they're corrected quickly. And you know, I know that they're human, and it's a process that for the most part they're not doing it regularly. So there's
Yes.
you know, the
Right.
training, just like we're going through and finding out how to do this, how to do that. I like the double check with the different parties, people from the different parties pairing together. I guess I wasn't totally aware of that, but I think that's a great idea as well.
Mhm.
Thank you. And Norma?
Yeah, I think you'll know, Emily, by the fact that I was a little concerned about the title of our training, Stop Voter Sabotage, because I didn't want to send the message that we thought that the elections were being sabotaged. And yes, I believe that most of the volunteers, certainly most of the staff, my interactions with staff in our election commission office are very professional people, very caring people, patient people. And so, yeah, I think they're mostly accurate. And if there are mistakes, they're human error, like humans make mistakes,
Right.
and that they work to correct them.
Great, thank you. Lynn?
I
do you
will
want to
say this though, I think the title of this about help, what is
Yeah,
stop sabotage? I mean, I think that's very appropriate because we know from years past. I mean, I think everybody in this country knows things that have happened. So I think this is very, very appropriate. I had a situation where, as a poll worker, where there's some people who need help. There's in particular another person I call my mother. She's like a surrogate mother. She's like 94, and I actually she's turned 95. And I look after her, right? And so I get her to the polls because I'm working at the polls. She's not in my ward to vote, so I have to get her to early vote, right? So I remember last year in the November election, I was taking her. So she needs assistance because she doesn't comprehend well. Just not, and she does have some dementia, but at that time it wasn't as far as it is now. But she needs some help. So I was going to assist her because she's in a walker, but one of the other poll workers there, where we went to early vote, wanted to help her, but I actually seen her when they gave her the pencil and used the eraser part, kind of pointing to her what she should vote for. I had to intervene because you can't tell people who to vote for.
Yeah.
Regardless of their situation, regardless if she had some dementia and that her understanding, she's just somebody who doesn't really keep up. She knows when it's time to vote because she lives in a senior housing and then, they keep all this information up. But those are things that we actually have to watch out for. I don't know if the person was an independent, a Republican. I don't know what their political affiliation was. It's just that I had to intervene. So you can't tell
Glad
her.
you were there.
To this one and that one, because I was voting myself. I was early voting myself. I'm sorry, my kitten is all up on me. I'm sorry.
Thank you for sharing that. So I want to move on just because I want to make sure that we can get through this, the whole training.
Okay.
Those are really, really helpful responses. Lynn, is there anything quick that you want to add before we do, or shall I go on?
No, I was just going to say number 3, we're human, everybody makes mistakes, but I don't think there are many, if any, people doing it intentionally, although, lately I'm starting to wonder, so.
Okay, thank you. So we've been giving this training all over the country online, and we found that most people don't think that the workers will be absolutely perfect, and most people think that the workers are doing their best.
Yeah.
But because human beings make mistakes, that's one important reason to observe. So let's talk about what are the reasons this work is important. We think there's three major ones. We just talked about the first one, which is to catch mistakes. Election offices are often underfunded and understaffed, which makes it even harder to get everything right. And if you've ever had a job where you were expected to do more than you could possibly do, and you probably felt the urge to cut corners, observers being present while the votes are counted will help workers resist any urge like that to cut corners and make sure the procedures are being performed well.
Mhm.
The second reason is to get problems corrected. If you see problems, you may actually be able to get them corrected. And in a few minutes, we're going to talk about how to go about doing that if you see a problem. And then the third is that observers can help protect election workers from false allegations of problems. We've seen what can happen when lies are circulated about stolen elections, and your factual documentation maybe of what you've seen may be helpful if these false allegations occur. Many election workers will recognize this and welcome you. So it's really important to observe as accurately as you can. You'll be the eyes of the public. And as an observer, you can help increase public confidence in the fairness of the election process. The number of observers present at a counting center can vary quite a bit, as I mentioned, and we strongly recommend that you go with at least one buddy if you can. I know it's short notice and that may not be possible this time, but if you can find someone to go with you, it's great because then you can compare notes. You can make decisions together about what to do if you see a problem. You may even choose to observe different stations in the room where different parts of the process are happening. And if you can recruit a team of people to go, then you can coordinate so you cover as many of the days in the post-election period as possible. So I want to share with you a real life example of observers making a difference. And it's not a brand new story. It's from the California primary election in 2016. Where observers were watching vote processing in Los Angeles County, which is the biggest voting jurisdiction in the country. And in California, the Democratic Party allows independent voters to vote in the Democratic primary, but they don't get regular Democratic ballots that have things on them like Democratic Central Committee. They just get the ballot that's nonpartisan plus president. It's called a crossover ballot. And election workers were incorrectly processing these ballots in a way that was not counting the votes for president. The observers were able to get the count stopped while the supervisor figured out what to do with their complaint. And the supervisor agreed that it had been an error and corrected the way that the ballots were being processed, including going back over the ballots that had been processed incorrectly. And as a result, an estimated 66,500 votes for president were counted in the presidential primary that would not have been counted if those observers hadn't been present. 66,500 votes in one county. So it could be you who prevents a huge mistake like this in the future. And even when problems are corrected, it's important to document what happened, and in some cases even share it with others, which we'll talk about in a little bit. So I want to go through the steps involved in doing the actual observing. We'll use as an example observing the arrival and initial processing of votes. That's a process that starts after the polls close on election night and often continues into the next day, depending on the size of your municipality. If you won't be able to observe until later in the week, you'll be watching other parts of the process, but most of what we'll share here will still apply to you. Whenever possible, we recommend that you figure out when you're going to be able to go and find out what part of the process will be happening at the times that you can go, so that you can go over the training materials we have beforehand. So we have some like things that are specific to watching signature matching for places that do that. We have some training materials that are specific to watching the audits, that kind of stuff. And we'll make all that available to you in case you have the time and want to go deeper. And we'll cover how to find that stuff later in the presentation. So when you arrive anywhere to observe, you're going to need to sign in, present your photo ID. Like I mentioned before, you'll get a badge. You're supposed to get a badge. We'll see if you do or not. And there's a form that you'll need to fill out. All that is just routine. We recommend that you introduce yourself and ask the staff who to pose any questions to that you have. It's really important to respect the staffers' time. They're very busy. And to be respectful of them and, not act like you're the enemy. And I say that because there can be, depending on where you are, quite a difference in how staff respond to having observers there, especially now when they have reason to be afraid of some of the people who are coming in. And so you want to communicate to them that you're there to be supportive and not get in their way and just do a good job for the people. You should be able to take photos and video as long as there's no voting taking place. So if you decide, say, to go in and observe on election day and there's voting taking place in the location, they won't let you take photos and video. But I've read all the regulations and it looks like you should be allowed to take photos and video as long as there's not voting going on. So we recommend that you greet any other observers that are there and just kind of see if you can make allies of them. This next piece is really, really important, which is that while you're observing, you got to take notes. Notes will help you remember what you see to discuss with others. And you want to write them down right away, since other things may happen that make it hard to remember what happened earlier in the day. So we have a form that you can print out to take notes on if you want, or you can just use note paper. The main things to write down are the names of people, or if you can't get their names, a description of the people involved and what happens and what time it happened. And then if you're writing down your opinions, just make sure that you make it clear what's opinion and what's fact of what you're writing down. And even if you don't know what the people that you are watching should be doing, you'll learn a lot simply from watching and listening. Video is by far the best way to document what you see, although some places won't allow it. Like I said, it looks like in Wisconsin it should be allowed.
Can I interject here just for a second?
Yes.
At my polling place, when the observers come in, we've been instructed they are not allowed to take photos or
Right, because there are people voting.
not while they're voting, but even while you're signing them in.
I think that's true. I think in
that's
any
been told,
location
yeah.
where voting is happening, that you can't take photos and video.
Yeah. Okay. I thought you meant while the person was actually,
No, just like if there's people are like, if you could be in a situation where if you turned your camera the other way, you might catch a voter voting.
Right.
Or so my understanding is if there's voting taking place in a location when you're there, you won't be allowed to take photos or video. And otherwise you should be.
Okay.
And another option might be to, if you have a smartphone with an audio recording app on it, that you could record audio of what's happening. And you could also record your notes if that works better for you than writing them down. You could step over to a quiet corner of the room or into the restroom or something and say your notes into the the audio recorder. Okay, let's go to the next slide. On election night at the central facility, you can expect to see staff receiving and opening boxes or bags of ballots and probably feeding them through a high-speed scanner. Now, this picture is not from Wisconsin, so I don't know what your current ballot containers look like. I know it used to be bags that sometimes would come in with big rips in the side, and that was a big issue. So I don't know if
Still bags.
it's still bags. So you may see the ballots being fed through a high-speed scanner, and that just depends on whether in your municipality, the ballots are scanned and for counting at the polling place, or if it happens at the central count facility. So some votes will arrive on a memory device, such as a thumb drive or flash drive that could look like this. There's a few different ways it could look. Did you have a comment, Africa?
Oh, no, no, no.
Okay.
A political call was coming through, so
I see.
I didn't
I'm
answer.
getting a lot of those right now.
Yeah.
So you may see paper ballots coming in. You may see these small devices coming in that hold all the ballots on them, the vote counts on them, even though they're really tiny and look insignificant. And then those thumb drives, those flash drives, like in that second picture there, might arrive inside the actual scanner itself that they're bringing back from the polling place, or it might have been taken out and put into a bag or a box or an envelope. And then the staff at the central count will take them out, put them into the central counting equipment. And then it's important to watch where those devices go. You may also see ballots being scanned by a computer that counts them. So this is a picture of one of the brands of high-speed scanners that are used often at central count facilities. And so in some places, the absentee ballots will be counted at central count, even if the in-person votes are counted at the polling place. So it depends, and you can ask if you're not sure, like, how come some of the ballots are being counted here and some of them are not? That's probably why. So here are some examples of things to look for while you're observing, and more details are available on our website. Many places require that 2 people bring in each ballot box for security. So note how many people you see. If you're observing the ballots arriving, is anybody coming alone with ballots? And write that down and write down their description. I actually did not check to make sure that's the law in Wisconsin, but I believe it is, that nobody should ever be alone with ballots. So is anyone bringing in election materials unaccompanied? Do ballots and memory devices arrive sealed? Are they in some kind of container with a seal on it, with a number on it? Workers should have a list of those seal numbers, and just notice, are they checking the numbers on the containers against the list? That's how we make sure that they haven't been opened and messed with and sealed up again. Do they have someplace they're writing that down? If you'd like to learn more about locks and seals, we have more information available about that. If the jurisdiction where you are scans ballots at the polling place, results arrive on memory devices, as I've said, and these are small and not very noticeable, so they're hard to track. So what do you see about how the workers are handling them so that they couldn't be substituted, missed, or double counted? Then how do they track the batches of ballots to ensure that each one is scanned once and only once? Usually what they'll do is move them to distinct parts of the room, and they may also be sealed each time they're moved. So just basically what you want to be doing, no matter what you're observing, is notice the flow of the materials that are being worked with through the room. Notice what's supposed to be happening. And then, there will be a pattern to the activity, and then notice anything that doesn't fit that pattern. Any stack of ballots that suddenly heads in a different direction, or somebody walks in and takes a memory device and walks out of the room, or something like that, that's not part of the pattern. Do workers from the voting computer companies, who are often referred to as the vendors, access the election system? So staff from those companies might come in if there's a problem and upload new software to fix errors, and that can be a problem if the software shouldn't be changed during an election. So if anybody is opening up the machines and looking inside them, it's really important to write down again, a name or a description of them, ask what they're doing, and write down what they say. When workers are done with the materials, either at the end of an activity or at the end of a day, how are the materials stored and locked? So write down what you notice about that. Now let's talk a little bit about whether voting systems are connected to the internet. You've probably heard in the news that there's no need to worry about our elections being hacked because voting systems aren't connected to the internet. But is that true? Almost all computers get their security updates for their software from the internet, loaded onto USB drives or CDs. And if these updates contain malware, that goes into the election computers and infects them. Also, some of the voting systems now in use connect to the internet to send vote totals to the central office. So even when a particular computer isn't connected to the internet, it's not necessarily safe from hacking because it's indirectly connected to the internet. And I'm going to explain this. On the left, we've got an offline computer, not internet connected. This is where the vote counts from the polling places are being fed in. Now, if you've ever watched election night coverage on TV, you've heard them update the totals to say things like, with 47% of precincts reporting, so-and-so is in the lead. You're getting gradual updates on the vote count. So somehow they need to get that information. And generally speaking, how it works is that every half hour or so, staff will move the partial results from the election computer, like represented on the left, to an online computer, represented by the image at the right, to post on their website, send to the state office, send to news agencies, etc. And there's a right way and a wrong way to do this. Let's say results from the offline computer are loaded onto a flash drive that's then inserted into the online computer system used to transmit results. Malware from the internet can infect that online computer very quickly and even create false results. This malware could infect that flash drive that's been inserted there. They often put the same flash drive back into the election computer for the next update, so the malware can follow inside that USB drive, that flash drive, back into the election computer. So that's the wrong way to do it, and it's really, really common. It's dangerous and it's common. Because this is how it's often done, it's misleading to say that the election computer cannot be manipulated because it's not connected to the internet. My colleague Marilyn Marks, who's the executive director of the Coalition for Good Governance in Georgia, says this is like sharing needles. The best practice is for each update to be performed using a single-use CD or a paper printout or a new USB drive fresh from a factory sealed package. So if you see this sharing needles problem, make sure to write it down and tell us about it. So now let's talk about what you're going to do besides write down any problems that come up. We can't possibly go over everything that could happen. So you're going to need to use your own judgment about who it makes sense to tell about a specific situation. So you're going to want to think about things like who or what is causing the problem. Does immediate action need to be taken to correct the problem, or is it something that could be handled later? Who has the power to correct it? Who's in charge? Is this something that needs outside intervention from a hotline or a candidate or a party? So probably wouldn't be a party this time because I think everything that's on the ballot is a nonpartisan race, but candidates or the election protection hotline, which we'll talk about in a moment. So remember, when you arrived to observe, you found out who you're supposed to ask your questions to. So if you see a problem that you were going to want to tell that person, unless they're the ones who created the problem, consider comparing notes with your buddy, certainly, and any other observers in the room, which could include candidates or representatives from their campaigns. And you may know other groups in your community who would want this information. So you can share it with them, you call them up or text or tweet or email them to get them the information. You could even try to reach one of the campaigns if you think that their votes are not being counted fairly for some reason. And whether you find issues or not, we'd like you to send a brief summary to any of these groups and to us at Scrutineers. And this will help us improve our training in the future. Like if you say to us, I really didn't understand this thing that was going on, or whatever it is that you observe that if there's anything you feel like we didn't prepare you for, we'd like to hear about it. If you see a serious problem, you can call the Election Protection Hotline at 866 Our Vote. That's the phone number there on the screen, which is, excuse me, run by the nonpartisan group Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights. And that's a coalition. There's a coalition of organizations that run that hotline. And they have lines available in multiple languages, not just in English. And that hotline is a free service. They will be open this week. They'll be open Monday through Thursday. At least they have pretty long hours. And they've told me that if I call them and tell them I need them to be open on Friday, that they will get some volunteers for Friday. So if things are really hopping and you think, oh boy, we might need them on Friday, let me know. Through the Scrutineers website, you can communicate with me. And if you try to reach them and you can't reach them and you want to try to reach out to Scrutineers, we've got, you can send an email to volunteers@scrutineers.org. Oh, Lynn, could you put that in the chat? I can't reach the chat where I am right now. Volunteers@scrutineers.org, and we will get back to you and help you as soon as we can. If there were hundreds of you, I couldn't offer that, but with only a few of you, I can. So now I'm going to go over with you a scenario, and Lynn, you can just, when you're ready, go to the next slide. So you can imagine how this might work when you're observing. I want you to imagine that you're observing. I'm going to suggest a situation and ask you what you would do. So suppose you've been seeing pairs of workers bringing in containers of ballots to the counting facility. And once they're inside, they set the containers on a table where other workers are processing them. And then you see one or two people bring in a similar container, but instead of bringing it to the table where everyone else is taking them, they set it down in a corner and walk out. And you watch for a few minutes and that container just sits there. So what would you do? And we are really behind on time because of starting late and having some discussion. So I want to say I probably have about 10 minutes more of presenting, and I know some of you may need to go because we're at the top of the hour. We are recording and we'll send this out to you, but I want to ask you to keep your responses to this really brief so that we can finish and have time for your questions. So what would you do in this situation if you see somebody come in with a container that looks like a ballot container, not set it on the table, but set it down in a corner and leave? Anybody want to respond to that?
I thought somebody else was going first. They can go ahead.
Go ahead.
Go
I
ahead.
would ask the person that I'm supposed to ask questions, ask them, why is that bag being left in a corner?
Okay. Thank you.
Agreed.
Agreed.
Yeah, I agree too. A staff person or some official person you'd ask. Why?
Anything
I
else?
guess they would write down as quickly as I could a description of the person who left it there or
Good
people,
idea.
since I don't think I would know their names, and a description of the bag, if it's obvious that it's ballots or not.
And the
Agreed.
time that it happened would be
Mhm.
important. The other thing that I would add is, remember we talked about that the ballot, those containers usually have seals on them. I would ask the worker to walk over to that container with me so that we can both write down the any numbers or other identifying information on the container. I wouldn't do it by myself because I wouldn't want anybody to think I was interfering with the bag, but I would ask a worker to go over there with me and do that.
and might want to just, let the chief person who you should report to, or persons, that this is a person who came in not with two people bringing it in. It was just one person. Because you
Yeah.
always have to look out for safety concerns too. It may not even be ballots, you know.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. I mean, and so, if you're in an airport and there's a bag sitting on the floor, they call the bomb
Yes.
squad. So,
Exactly. Exactly.
and if you've taken note of a description of the person, you're going to want to share that with the worker as well, because they may not have seen the person.
Mhm.
But what about walking up to the person to ask them, why did they sit that there? Or do they need someone to collect that bag or something before the
So
person leaves?
I,
Or
I
no?
think if I think that would be a reasonable thing to do. I would probably want to make sure at least somebody else was paying attention to you doing that in case it
Oh.
got dangerous in any way, or
Sure.
something. And it could be something as simple as there was a line at the table and they just really needed to use the bathroom. And they thought, oh, I'll set it down here and come get it in a minute. And, so it could be something innocent like that. That's not the best choice for them to make, to not have anybody watching it, but it might be the best thing they could figure out to do at the moment. So, we like to always look for innocent explanations of things first, and also take into consideration that not everything is innocent.
Mhm.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, so let's talk about how to prepare to observe. In Wisconsin, you can observe any of the public parts of the election, including the processing and counting of votes at any municipality. We called several to ask if there were any special rules about who could observe, and we're told by one that no small children were allowed, but no one else, everybody else said anyone can come. You don't have to be 18, you don't have to be a registered voter, and you don't have to live in that municipality. The Wisconsin Election Commission has a brochure that talks about observing the election, and you can, the front is about observing at polling places, so it doesn't apply to what we're talking about today. And then let's magnify the part of what it says on the back that's most important to us now, that part circled in gold. So it says, the state of Wisconsin permits individuals to observe voting and the election administration process at polling places on election day. It also permits observers to view the absentee voting process in the municipal clerk's office, central count processes, recounts, and voting in residential care facilities and nursing homes. So you may, now, you're not going to be there to watch people voting, so that part doesn't apply. So we recommend that you keep this brochure handy so that if anyone tells you you don't have the right to be there, you can show this to them. So I have a link to it on the screen, and I will also send that to you I'll send it to Norma to send to you in an email. And then you can either download it and print it or take a picture of it with your phone and keep it with you if you've got a smartphone. Again, we suggest that you find a buddy to observe with you if possible. Even having only one additional person is really, really helpful. The counting may not happen at the election office, especially in larger municipalities. They may have a special location, like sometimes it's at a warehouse or an arena or something like that. So call tomorrow to find out where the counting is happening. And we will send you a link to a list of the municipal clerk phone numbers so that you can call and ask. Some municipalities are telling us that they'll be streaming the vote counting online. So when you call, you might ask that too and ask how to watch it. So there may be times when you could watch online that you couldn't be there in person. Maybe you can go once in person and watch some more online. You won't see as much generally online as you will if you go in person, and you can't ask questions or say, hey, wait a minute, there's a problem over there if you're just at home watching. Okay, a few more suggestions for you. One is to go to your municipality's election office website, and we'll send you a link with that information. And find several things, look for several things there. Any local rules they have about observing, the that are separate from the state rules. And again, we called a bunch of them to find out if there were any, and it doesn't seem like there are, but there could be places that are unusual. If you'll have to, so one thing is they might have a rule that you have to stand a certain distance away from the election workers. And you can actually, if you have a smartphone, put a measuring tape app on your phone so that you can measure the distance that they're making you stand away to make sure that, like, we've had situations where there's a limit to, oh, you have to be 10 feet away, but the places they made people stand was actually 20 feet away. And people who had that kind of app were able to say, you need to let us get 10 feet closer because we just measured it and you're making us stay too far away and we can't see. It's a good idea to follow the election office on social media so that you can keep an eye on anything they're announcing about changes in schedule. Sometimes they might announce we're going to be continuing to count until midnight tonight, and you could go after work on a day when you didn't think you could go. And to sign up for their email list. So the actual activities that you'll be watching can vary from state to state. So the activities might include determining which provisional ballots and vote by mail ballots or absentee ballots are valid and must be counted. Workers may have to recopy ballots that can't be read by the scanners, which is something that's really startling if you don't know that's going to happen, but it is actually just part of the procedure. Some states will check or audit some of the results by hand to catch computer mistakes and ensure computer tallies are accurate. There's, let's see, when I was last involved in Wisconsin, it was the recount after the 2016 election, and counties were given the choice about whether to do the recounts by, this wasn't auditing, this was recounting by hand or by machine, and about half of the counties did one and half did the other. So I'm not exactly sure for auditing right now exactly what the procedures are. They happen, but they do have to happen before the results are finalized. So we really encourage you to observe as many of the parts of the process as you can, including recounts and audits, which are really important. And we have a list that I will give you a link to of what we recommend that you bring with you when you go to observe. So observing after the election is really one of the most underused tools in the election protection toolbox. And this work can be rewarding, and honestly, it can also be really boring to stand and watch things being scanned in a computer or whatever the procedure is. It's kind of like playing outfield in a baseball or softball game. Most of the time, you're just standing around not doing much, but you have to pay very close attention because sometimes a moment will come when you're taking quick and decisive action will make a big difference. So I credit a woman named Patty Whipfler with that metaphor, who used it in a workshop that I went to that was actually about parenting teenagers, but I think it applies here too, that most of the time you're just standing around watching, but a moment comes when your quick and decisive action can make a big difference. So if you have never observed before, you're going to learn a lot, even if you can only go once for a couple of hours. And you can decide how deep you want to dive into learning about the different processes involved in processing and counting votes. Like I said, we have more materials to share with you, and it's okay to go without looking at any of them. I know it's really short notice. So even if the outcome of an election is announced right away, those results are not final until all of the steps are complete. And that in-between time is crucial. It's important that we be there to help make sure it goes well. More public oversight of our elections is really a powerful way to increase voter confidence, which is really suffering in this country right now. So now I want to ask, and this is, we usually do this as a poll when we have a larger group gathered, on a scale of 1 to 5, with 5 being definitely, how likely are you to observe? So let's go to the next slide where it shows 5 is definitely I will observe, probably, maybe, not likely, and no is definitely not. So I'm gonna ask each of you to just give me a number of where you are right now on the idea of doing this after election observing.
4.
4?
This
Okay,
is for,
Africa.
oh,
Bridget, you said 3?
I said 4
You
and
said
maybe 3.5,
3.5 or
but
4?
yeah.
Okay. And what about you, Norma? I know you're busy with a lot of stuff.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm not physically able to do that, but I'd love to. But
Well,
no,
maybe you can watch on if they're
yeah,
streaming it.
now I will look that up. I definitely will
Okay.
look that up. Yeah, that's
Great.
definite.
Great.
Yeah, could I ask Bridget where you are? Bridget, are you going to be observing in Milwaukee, or are you in some other location?
Well, that's what I'm trying to figure out. I do have, I'm in school through the day and I was out a couple of days last week. So my intention is to vote before school and then observe after school. And if possible, I wouldn't mind going down to Milwaukee. I know that I'm here in Fond du Lac, actually in one of the townships outside of Fond du Lac is where the nearest precinct is for me. And if I would be more helpful in Milwaukee, I'd certainly go down there, but I'd have to get some information about where I would be most helpful, I think is what my angst is right now.
How far is it from Fond du Lac to Milwaukee?
About an hour.
About an
About
hour.
right?
Mhm,
Yeah.
correct.
I personally think that if you can do it and if you have a long enough piece of time that it's worth the the transportation time, that you would be most useful to go to Milwaukee. But maybe you could do one day and one another day. And a lot of times they do work until late at night and even sometimes on the weekends, though I don't think that will be happening for this election.
Yeah.
Sure.
I think it would probably basically almost get through that night. I remember back in November, we didn't get out there till well after midnight. So, we were
Okay.
there from
That's not uncommon.
5 in the morning. From 5 in the morning.
Sure.
Wow.
Until
Where
the last
would
of
be-
us were leaving, after everything was boxed up and everything.
Sure.
It was a very, very long. I'm just concerned about her driving that distance, and if she stays that late at night or if it goes later, driving back home at night at that time of night. That would be my
Yeah.
concern as a woman.
Yeah, I hear you.
Right.
All of that,
Right.
those are important considerations.
Yeah.
So we're just
I've got a
almost,
sister- I've got a sister who lives in South Milwaukee
Oh,
that
great.
I could over with her. What would be the closest precinct or ballot counting venue to her? Is there an easy way to find those out? where
so
this would
it's
be
not by
happening?
county, but by municipality. So in South Milwaukee, there will be a South Milwaukee counting place.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
So
Okay.
when I send you the link that has the contact information, it actually has every municipality's clerk on it and their phone number and their website if they have a website. So we'll send that out to you.
Perfect.
So, and I will in a moment give you information about where you can find all the stuff that I've talked about today. But first, I want to take a quick moment to tell you about Scrutineers. Like Norma said at the top when she introduced me, Scrutineers is a nonpartisan online community of people who care about fair elections and want to help elections be more transparent, more accessible, and more secure. And Scrutineers members, there are a little over 1,000 of us, work in their own communities all around the US and also help out in hotspots in other communities, usually from their homes. And so we have a public website that you can look around on, and we also have a membership site, which is where most of our activity happens. Members share information with each other, watch videos of trainings on different topics like the different types of voting systems in use and their vulnerabilities, or how to advocate for change in your community. And we sometimes have special events for members and lots of opportunities to get involved and make a difference. We try to engage our members in ways that are more varied than kind of the typical call Congress, write postcards, make phone calls, but other kinds of work as well. So our membership site is designed to be a place where people who care about fair elections can learn information like what we've shared with you today, connect with others, and take action to make elections fairer, more transparent, more accessible, and more secure. And we're making short trainings about observing available even to non-members on our site. And then inside our membership, we have more in-depth training. So I want to invite all of you, other than Lynn, who's already a member and is here to help me with the slides today, to join the community at scrutineers.org. Fighting for the freedom to vote is really hard work, and it's more powerful and more satisfying to work in community. We have a very steep membership fee. It's a one-time fee. It's not monthly. It is $1.99. And the only reason we charge that is to keep bots from getting into our site. And if that for any reason is a problem for you, send me an email and we'll waive the fee and welcome you as a member. I want to be clear that you don't have to be a member of Scrutineers in order to get the additional information and trainings related to observing that I've shared with you today, but we'd love to have you if you want to become more involved. So most of the materials I've referred to today are at scrutineers.org/train1. So scrutineers.org/train1. And we will send this link to you as well as others I've mentioned by email. On that page, I just want to mention there is a video of a training, and it's an older version of this training that doesn't have the Wisconsin specific information in it. So if you want to watch this again or share it with somebody else, share the one we're going to email you a link to, not the one that's on the web page. And at the bottom of this web page, scrutineers.org/train1, there's a form that you can fill out. And as soon as you fill it out, that you'll get immediate access to the specific trainings that are about different topics that we've covered today. So like information about observing an audit, information about signature matching, all sorts of other interesting things. And if we would really like you to fill out that information and let us know where you're going to observe so that we can follow up with you afterwards and ask how it went. If you don't want to do that, but want me to follow up with you and want to just put your email address in the chat, I can follow up with you that way if that's easier for you. But I hope you will complete that form and get on our email list. And then we can also notify you when we update the site with new materials. So one final reminder is that we really encourage you to get the schedule of activities that can be observed in your county to figure out when you can go, make sure you know where to go. And just to kind of take a look at I'm sorry, I just lost my place. Take a look at this little review screen of some of the things we talked about the reasons to observe and where to report issues that come up. So I want to thank you so much for attending today, and thanks again to Norma and Souls to the Polls for your amazing work and for inviting us to present this training. Thanks to Lynn for running the slides, and a special thanks to all of you who are watching this live or on the recording and making plans to observe or otherwise working on the elections. We look forward to hearing about your experience, and we hope to see you as new members of Scrutineers. Also, if you're part of an organization that you think would benefit from this training, let me know, and we'd be happy to come present it to you. We don't charge to do that or anything, but we love to connect with different groups. So remember, your voice matters, your vote matters, and your work matters.
Thank you. My kitten thanks you too.
I'm sorry?
I said my kitten thanks you too.
Aw,
He's
what's
been
your kitten's
laying
name?
here under my chin for like this, almost this whole thing.
He looks pretty happy.
Yeah.
I've
He's
got
my
one of
baby.
my own. Bridget said she hung up too quickly and she just wanted to thank everyone. Yeah, she just called. So
Aw.
yeah, thank you
And thank
too,
you too, Norma.
Emily. Thank you, Africa. I'm going to be back in touch with you for sure.
Okay.
But thank you so much for joining us today. I wanted to ask just quickly, Emily, do they have paid observers? Are people ever paid to do that work?
I don't know of anyone that's paying folks to observe. We sometimes at Scrutineers are able to pay people to do another part of the kind of collecting information about what happens at elections, which is in places where they post the precinct level results outside polling places,
Mhm.
which is not done everywhere in Wisconsin, but is done some places apparently. We sometimes will pay people to go out and take videos of those election results.
Yeah.
We don't have a program at this election doing that, but we've done that in Atlanta and Philadelphia and in a couple of counties in Florida. In
But
recent
if an
elections.
organization say wanted to pay people, is that is it allowed then if they wanted to?
I don't know of anything that would make that illegal.
Okay, yeah.
And you might want to check with the election commissions, because I'm sure you know that poll workers, they have a choice either to, if you want to volunteer or be paid. So you might want to check with Lady Sonia
Sure.
Saldana and check with her and maybe see if the observers, if they want to volunteer. It might be the same kind of system. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
I
I
know
can
I
do that.
wasn't paid when I did it, and it wasn't like a choice.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah, I'll check that. Well,
Mhm.
thank you again for joining us, Emily, and we
Thank
really
you.
appreciate
You're
it.
welcome.
Thank you, Africa. Nice to meet you, Lynn. Thank you for handling the slides, and yeah.
And
You guys-
Africa, would it be okay if I reach out to you about sharing your experiences in the Scrutineers community?
Yes, sure.
Okay, so
Yeah.
can I get your contact information from Norma? Would that be okay?
Yes, yep, you surely can. Yep.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I will
Okay.
sign up for that. I would love to hear that.
And
Oh,
thank you
great.
so much. And I will also sign up for and pay my $1.99 for scrutineers.org. I will
Sounds
do that.
great. Well, I'll see you there. And
all
Okay.
righty.
and thank you again, Norma. And I will send you those links to send out to the folks that were here and those who signed up and couldn't come live.
Absolutely.
All
All
right.
righty. Well, you
Have a
guys
good
enjoy
night
your
and
evening.
best wishes
Have a
this
good
week.
evening.
All right. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.